Outputting our coverage. It's what we do. That's all we do every Thursday at 5:30. College football. Mountain West Conference. Doesn't matter. SEC is all that matters. Nick Saban is crazy. Yeah.
And welcome back into another exciting episode of Outputting Our Coverage. We're a little bit rusty. We haven't been showing.
It's a little different, you know. Using a different computer. We got a little different element.
We're just kind of freestyling today, and as you may know, that is typically the best Outputting Our Coverage output that we produce is when we don't really have a plan. So,
definitely.
So we're definitely taking on that one today. Things have been a little bit crazy here at Outputting Our Coverage headquarters the past 2 weeks, but we're trying to get back on the right track here. We've hired a private security firm to make sure that we get here to our show on time each week.
Right, they're not doing a very good job.
No, they're definitely not, but it worked for Gene Chiswick, so we figured it'd probably work for us too, right?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, so speaking of Gene Chiswick, not really, the SEC meetings happening in beautiful Destin, Florida this past week. The coaches, athletic directors all getting together, really probably just an excuse to go to the beach for everybody on the university's dime.
What is it, like 103 there?
I'm sure it's real nice at the resort. I bet their beach is probably air-conditioned.
That's probably true,
if I had to guess, so... nothing huge coming out of the SEC meetings this week. Probably the biggest talk among athletic directors and football coaches is still how to get the football schedule to work best now that there are 14 SEC teams.
They kind of put themselves in a corner.
Right. I mean, they knew this was going to be a problem. They've just kind of been scheduling year to year, but they got to figure out a permanent solution.
They do. I kind of like what they have right now. It keeps with some interesting games. They need a more long-term solution, but I don't see how you can play more SEC games, do you?
Yeah, so at this point, what you've got is a 6-1-1 model. So you've got 6 games against all the teams in your division.
Right.
You've got one permanent opponent from the other division, which, like Auburn's case, would be Georgia. For Alabama, it's Tennessee. LSU's Florida. So on and so forth.
Right.
And then you have one rotating game among teams in the other division. So like this year, I think Auburn's playing Tennessee, Alabama's, don't recall who's theirs is against, but that's the model that's set up right now. Now, prior to expanding to 14 teams, the way everyone still played 8 conference games, but you had 5 games against your division rivals.
Right.
You had one permanent cross-division opponent, and then you had 2 rotating games. So worked out pretty nicely. I think within 4 years, you ended up playing everybody within the SEC.
It was very round. You
Right.
know, it worked out well for everybody.
Now, of course, with having 14 teams now, if you still stick with 8 conference games, within 4 years, you're not going to play everyone in the SEC. So you can make an argument that the players are kind of being cheated a little bit because, you know, they're not getting to play all the teams. Really, the argument against, I think, is the SEC is a pretty tough conference.
It is.
And you add another conference game, you get to 9 conference games. I can guarantee you what happens at that point is every single SEC team is, for their non-conference schedule, scheduling Middle Tennessee Sisters of the Poor,
the Citadel.
You're not going to see any marquee non-conference matchups. Are those types of games important to you, David?
I think they are because you generate a lot of money for the universities. You generate a lot of money for the SEC. It's better TV. A lot of people tune in.
Right.
I think you have to have those games.
So interestingly enough, and David, I hope you can try to explain this one to me. The only SEC coach that is in favor of expanding to 9 games right now is Nick Saban. What interest could he possibly have in that? Why would he want to change the model that he's so successful in right now?
I'm going to play devil's advocate and just think that if Nick Saban can get to 9 games, then he thinks he can justify going to the national championship with even 2 losses. It just gives him an extra loss that he can justify with.
That's a great point. I hadn't really thought about it that way. If you are playing 9 SEC games, the argument already is there right now that the SEC is such a strong conference. Even with some losses, you still deserve to be in. If you're playing another SEC game, that's a good argument.
Could give you some wiggle.
I hadn't really thought about that. Now, will that matter so much with the playoff coming in. Does that change the game at all?
It depends on the committee. We still don't know what the committee is going to be like.
And
so.
that's an excellent point. We don't know if the committee will feel, the same way that maybe the general public and the pollsters do, that the SEC, being a stronger conference, deserves some leeway. That's not a great word to use, but there's a greater tolerance for some losses. But what happens if the committee comes in and says, no, we're going to place a premium on teams that are undefeated, or
I don't know,
fewer losses he has.
This whole committee just scares me to death. If you get the wrong people in there, it could just go crazy. They got it right with the playoffs, and then they completely screwed it up with the committee.
Yeah, personally, I think we both agreed on this earlier. What they really should have done, the BCS, for all of its faults, I still think they should have stuck to a computer-based model to choose these 4 teams for the playoff.
And if you need to, add other polls in there and average them together or something.
And I've heard the argument that, the basketball system works with a committee. Well, basketball has 68 teams.
And they still have controversy.
Right. And I understand the controversy over the 69th team. Nobody really cares that much about that, but I think people are still really going to care about who the number 5 team is that gets left out of the football playoff. And there's just no way for a committee of people to be unbiased. It's impossible.
It's impossible for one person to be unbiased. Right. You are biased when you come into this world.
Right. So that's a different issue entirely. Still needs to be worked out. But personally, my feelings on the SEC's scheduling. I know there's also been a lot of talk. Les Miles pushing for elimination of the permanent opponents. He thinks that some of the pairings are unfair. LSU having to play Florida every year. I think his argument was that's more difficult than Alabama having to play Tennessee every year. I think that's completely ridiculous.
It is, because
it's very cyclical.
It's more difficult, these 3 years, but wait 3 more years.
I mean, let's look back to the 90s. You wouldn't want to have had to play either Tennessee or Florida in the 90s, but Tennessee was a pretty darn good team.
I would say at that point, Alabama's your pushover.
Right. And Tennessee will be a good team again. There's too much money there for them not to be. I mean, it's only, it's taken a little bit longer than I think they thought. The Lane Kiffin effect is sticking around for them, but,
USC's starting to feel that effect.
Yeah. If you take away things like the permanent cross-division rivals, you take away what makes college football different than the NFL.
Yeah.
If you're trying to make things fair, just watch the NFL. College football, by admission, is not fair.
Right.
And it's impossible for it to be fair.
It's part of it. Everybody's trying to make it fair. It's not going to get there. I don't have a problem with the way they're doing things now. Leave it alone. Move on.
Personally, I would kind of like to see 9 conference games because, the SEC rivalries to me are more important than playing non-conference games.
See, but I think with the majority of the non-conference games, you're probably right. But the couple that matter, if you get rid of those, football becomes a little boring and you lose a lot of money. Alabama, Michigan to start the year off. That's never happening if you get 9 SEC games.
That's true.
Alabama, Virginia Tech, Auburn playing Clemson at the beginning. I mean, you're not going to have these
those
games.
things aren't going to happen. Although you might be able to make an argument and say that if the money is attractive enough, they might still happen. I mean, the TV money for those types of games in prime time has been increasing.
What's more valuable long term, the one-time TV contract or the national championship and all the dividends you get
I think
from
that's
that?
something that teams are going to have to weigh. And I think you're right. Maybe the top-tier teams are not going to be as willing to play in those games now. You probably, at that point, see teams like Mississippi State, Missouri, those types of SEC teams, they would jump on that type of preseason opportunity.
Right now, a Vanderbilt or a Tennessee. Yeah, I agree with that.
I think that's probably what you'd see. Now, the other argument, if you're going to 9 conference games, you might be able to say that with this new playoff structure, you're going to see some better non-conference games as a result of that. And then in addition to those playoff games, the new structure for whatever the BCS games are going to be called now, the non-playoff ones, hopefully we're going to see some better games with those too, some better matchups.
Yeah, I mean, we're still going to have conference alignments with all the Bulls, so you're still going to be wrapped up in conferences. But
if you have a selection committee that's helping to determine those as well, I'm hopeful that we'll see some better matchups in those.
And you might, but money's always going to win the day.
Yeah, and it will. Personally, I'd rather see a marquee non-conference matchup at the end of the season than at the beginning of the season.
And that's true, but it also depends on how much do the teams care.
Right.
I mean, has the team gotten slided out of the 4-team playoff and now they could care less about this bowl? Or kind of like a Florida. I mean, Florida, you got to give it up to Louisville. They came and they played really well in that bowl game last year, but Florida could care less about that game. You could tell when they came out they were just not trying.
Yeah, well, maybe there's a way to raise the stakes or something and make the some kind of trophy or monetary incentive for whatever conference has the best record in the bowl season. There's a little bit more than just the getting called out on ESPN that happens right now.
Right, or that. Capital One being a Capital One contender.
Maybe you make it mean something. I don't know how you
that'd
do
be
that.
tough to do, but yeah, I mean that's what you'd have to do. You'd have to make the games mean something.
Right. So some interesting.
The team with the highest winning percentage in the bowl games gets home field advantage.
What is this, baseball? The All-Star game?
Although with the rotating sites, I guess that wouldn't make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, well, we'll think about it. We'll put it under consideration. We'll email our suggestion to the commissioners
of each league.
Yes, we'll let them know.
And not to the Notre Dame president. He doesn't matter.
Speaking of Notre Dame, David, it sounds like they got more problems with a player wearing the jersey number 5, but on the other side of the ball this time.
Yeah, I have no idea what they're going to do. Everett Golston.
Yeah, Everett Golston, academically ineligible, was actually, for better or worse, kicked out of school for his academic ineligibility. Has a chance to come back, but he will definitely be gone for the 2013 season. Gunnar Kyle, the big recruit that Notre Dame had coming in, he's already decided to transfer.
He's at Cincinnati.
He's at Cincinnati with old Tommy Tuberville.
That's right.
I've seen it mentioned that it would still be a possibility, I think, through some loopholes for him to come back.
It would, but they've already talked to him, and he said he's dedicated to Tubby and the Bearcats.
We'll see. We'll see how what plays out there.
I think as long as Tommy Reese is there, he's not coming back.
Yeah, Tommy Reese, an interesting study. At times for Notre Dame has looked really good, and at times has looked really bad.
He has. He's looked pitiful. They've also got a JUCO transfer and a true freshman, I believe, who was a pretty big recruit coming in for him, but neither one of them have started an NCAA Division I game.
So let me ask you this, David. Scale of 1 to 10, how big of a mistake was it for Brian Kelly not to jump for an NFL job this past year?
I'm going to give it a 3. I really think it was probably a good decision to stay. He knew about the Golston thing, but to me, Brian Kelly is not an NFL coach. I think he would have been eaten up. I think he would have been maybe 2 years in the NFL and then straight back to college, where he'd probably have a lesser job and have to work his way back up. Notre Dame has enough of a recruiting push after this last year that in the next 2 years they'll probably be pretty good again. You might have to take one on the chin this year, but overall I think it's probably a better decision long term.
So does Notre Dame make a BCS bowl this year?
No, definitely not.
How many years till they get back to one, you think?
Maybe 2.
So like maybe the year after this one?
Yeah, I think so. They'll have a chance to, but this year, maybe 7 wins. Next year, maybe 8 or 9. But Notre Dame doesn't need as many as everybody else to get into BCS bowl.
That is true. Neither does Alabama sometimes.
This is true.
Speaking of Alabama, they have some quarterback news as well. Backup quarterback Philip Eli, who was the true backup, right? I mean,
he was
going
a
to
2 or
be
3,
the number 2, probably the number 2 guy behind AJ. So
yeah, but they've still got the Sims guy, and they're very high on him.
That's true.
He gives them a different look.
So how big of a deal is this if Philip Eli transfers to Toledo?
I don't think it's a big deal. I think he kind of saw the writing on the wall. I truly think that he had already lost his backup spot, whether it was announced to the public or not. And I think it's probably better for everybody. He's going to get a shot in Toledo.
Who's the quarterback of the future for Alabama?
Sims, I think.
You think
Sims? Definitely. They'll have a new look offense, but it'll definitely be Sims.
So he's a little bit more mobile guy?
He's a little more mobile, yeah. And they ran a lot of option with him. Now, a lot of that had to do with the fact that they were up in those games, and they were trying to run the clock out. But I think from what we've seen of him, he can control the ball pretty well. Which fits right into the Saban offense, and Saban will not ask him to do a whole lot. So I think probably a perfect offense for him, at least to get started. And then look at McCarron. McCarron wasn't that great, and then he got a little confidence not having to do a whole lot and ended up taking over the offense. So who knows?
All right. we'll see how it goes. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back on the other side here of outputting our coverage.
We're back. We're back. We're back.
We're back, here we go.
No more commercials.
Here we go.
Always talking stuff.
We're back.
Don't know what we're talking about.
But we're back. Time for the show.
And we are back here on Outputting Our Coverage. The college football never stops here. We lied a little bit, or, as college football coaches would say, we have not been contacted about a potential job at another university, nor did we really mean that we were going to start the SEC team previews on time like we said we would. But
exactly.
It is still coming, we promise. It won't be this week, and we're going to have to group some of the crappier teams together. I mentioned to David that we should just take the bottom 4 teams in the SEC and kind of split those, and then I realized that Auburn was one of those teams. That was a sad reality check.
Bottom of the bottom?
Yeah. Well, they were
Record-wise.
last in the West, and I think their record was slightly better than Kentucky's.
Overall. Yes.
And the same SEC record.
Right.
So
Over.
Yeah. So, they weren't last.
I agree. Okay.
But
they were close.
Anyway, so we'll see how we're going to split those up. There is still some other college football news floating around at the moment, though, right, David?
There is. Ohio State's president is still insane and old.
And he wears bow ties.
And kind of feels like he can say whatever he wants to say.
Right.
So he came out and kind of bashed Notre Dame, which was funny. The Big Ten for a long time has tried to court Notre Dame and get them to come into their conference with little success. He basically said that those priests, you can't trust them on any day but Sunday.
Oh, wow.
And said it in public. And
that sounds like one of those jokes you'd make in Caddyshack, like in the locker room or something.
Right, or, you kind of see yourself hearing it in old folks' homes, which I think he might think he's in one right now.
He may not know where he is.
He's
David.
pretty old.
It's very possible.
He also said he was asked to respond to a lot of SEC critics who say the Big Ten can't count, because we've said that on our show. I think we've got a song that talks about that.
We do.
They have 14 teams.
14 of
They're
them.
called the Big Ten.
It's crazy. Doesn't make sense.
You know what his response was? When the SEC people figure out how to read and write, then they can figure out what we're doing here. So
interesting.
Just a bigoted old man.
Well, I'm pretty sure that SEC fans know at least how to count high enough to count the number of consecutive national championships that the conference has won. So,
plus, if they can't, it's on a lot of T-shirts walking around down here.
I think they have probably figured that one out by now. Let's talk about another Big Ten team. It's not exactly football related, but Rutgers dumpster fire.
Oh,
what the heck?
Apparently, Rutgers does not know how to do a background check on anybody.
All right, well, let's back up a little bit further. The Rutgers story started with the basketball coach.
Right. He was throwing basketballs at kids. It was all caught on videotape.
Cursing them out, calling them fairies, among other things. I mean,
lots of slurs.
Pretty bad stuff. And he was on videotape. And I think he knew he was on videotape.
He did. It was practice film. He went back and reviewed that videotape himself.
I mean, that's just dumb.
That's pretty
anyway,
dumb.
Water under the bridge there.
Right. So you have a bad egg here and there. Then they fire their volleyball coach, I believe it is. Brought in another volleyball coach who has allegedly
athletic director.
Yeah, former volleyball coach who has allegedly, now they have not produced it yet, but there's apparently a document that has been signed by every one of her former players saying that they hated her. She called them names, yelled at them, pretty much the same thing that the basketball coach did.
Interesting.
It looks like they're looking for the same kind of talent.
What this really leads me to believe is that the only type of people that will move to New Jersey are people that you don't want anywhere else.
Well, New Jersey people from New Jersey are known to have a temper. I mean,
get out of here.
Right? Yeah, that's a pretty good accent.
Yeah, I've been practicing. I have.
Also, their football coach or basketball coach? Maybe it was their baseball coach. Had a resume out there that said that he graduated from Rutgers. Just a little bit of fact-checking shows, nope, he never graduated.
Oh, I forgot about that one. Yeah, that happened too, didn't it?
Right.
Man, they're just
A simple background check.
They should probably just shut down the university at this point.
They just joined the Big Ten.
Yeah, I wonder if the Big Ten is trying to get out of that one.
I don't know. I mean, Ohio State's president should ask Rutgers if they can read a background check.
Yeah, really.
So
Really? Yeah. Let's send him an email. Tell him
together.
That's genius.
Penn State,
Yeah.
another Big Ten team. We're just all about the Big Ten right now.
Yeah, the Big Ten. Joe Paterno's family is going to file suit against the NCAA. Don't know how long it's going to take these people to figure out that maybe they should just shut up, and people were just starting to forget about it now. Again, and they just keep bringing it up over and over. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious at this point that even if Joe Paterno didn't know what happened, he should have known.
Right.
So there, in my eyes, there's no way that any positive anything could be claimed for Paterno's family.
Did the NCAA overstep their bounds? Yes. Were the penalties within their limits? Probably not. Does that have anything to do with the facts of the case? No, it doesn't have anything to do with it.
No, just
it's sad. It's really gotten to the point where it's sad.
Yep.
So that's about all the college football news I think that's come out in the last little while.
Let's talk baseball real quick. College baseball. Auburn very close to getting into the NCAA tournament, did not make it, fired their baseball coach. John Pulowski, he's out.
That was a little trigger.
He's been there for 5 years, made the NCAA tournament one time, has made the SEC tournament, I believe, 4 out of those 5 years, but that's not as big a deal as it used to be because now 12 out of the 14 teams get in. So not a huge deal to get into that.
But let's put the SEC is no slouch in baseball as well. They have some really good teams.
Vanderbilt, by many accounts, one of the best teams in the country this year.
South Carolina
is always up there. Florida has been pretty much, they're a little bit down this year, but they're normally one of the top teams in the country. LSU has 6 national championships.
Mississippi State's a strong
Mississippi
program.
State has really gotten strong. Arkansas sometimes up there as well.
Alabama is back and forth.
Yeah, so SEC is certainly not an easy baseball conference, but I mean, what should be a realistic expectation for baseball coaches, say at Alabama and Auburn?
I would say half of your tenure, you're making the tournament.
Yeah,
the World Series tournament. But
okay.
I don't know. 1 out of 5, I say you got to give them another year.
I think the issue and the excuse that people make a lot of times for Alabama and Auburn is that
they're football schools.
Well, that, yes. And in addition to that, the baseball scholarships are not full cost of attendance scholarships.
Well, that's nowhere do they have that.
That's true. But in other states, a lot of times the players can get that scholarship money supplemented with lottery-funded scholarships. And that is not the case here in Alabama.
I don't think that's as big a deal.
A lot of people making excuses for that. I don't know if I buy that either. Auburn, when Hal Baird was the coach there, was a pretty consistent winner.
Yeah.
They were in the NCAA tournament more often than not, and they were fighting the same issue then. So,
and think about how you develop talent and how you get talent on the college level. You don't get it all from the state,
right.
And you're not eligible for that lottery money if you come from out of state.
That's true.
So I don't put a whole lot of stock in that.
That's true. I think the difficulty sometimes with college baseball, especially with the recruiting for that, is you go after these top guys, but it's a big risk. It's a risky play because the top guys have a pretty good chance of signing with a major league club right out of high school.
That's right, or one and done. They can leave at any time.
So you put all your eggs in that basket for these top guys, and you may not get them at all. You may only get them for 1 year. It's very difficult to build a consistent program, kind of like what we're seeing with college basketball. Now, of course, college basketball, they have to come for at least 1 year, which we've talked about is really stupid.
I think it is. It's terrible.
Baseball's the alternative. Baseball shows what happens when the high school guys can still jump directly, and it makes it very difficult to build a consistent program.
It is, but baseball is a little different when you look on the other side of it. In the NBA, when people were coming, like LeBron James, Kevin Garnett, in high school and coming straight out, they're starting. Yeah. They're on the starting 5. In baseball, you can be the best. You can be Steven Strasburg. You can be Mike Trout. You're spending 2 to 3 years in the minors.
That is true. That is a very different setup that baseball has, where the minor leagues kind of de facto replace college as the proving ground or
Right.
the training ground for these players. So in that sense, college baseball is always going to be pretty diluted,
Right.
just because the better guys are going to jump straight into the pros. But I don't know. I think this firing was probably warranted. He probably should have done a little bit better than he did, but still.
But who are you going to get? I mean,
That's
who's out
the
there
thing.
that's better?
A lot of folks mentioning the Sanford baseball coach, Casey Dunn,
It could be a good pickup.
who played for Auburn.
Bo Jackson.
Yeah, but just let Bo Jackson coach all the sports.
Bo knows.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, or why not just let Jay Jacobs coach everything? He's such a great athletic director.
Yeah.
He'd probably be a great coach too, right?
That would be terrible.
Yeah, we're not going to get any further into that.
Softball, Alabama softball was eliminated, I think, a couple nights ago by Tennessee squad. It was a pretty big upset. So
Yeah, Alabama perennially one of the best teams in the country in softball.
won the national
so,
championship last year.
Yeah, yeah.
Got
so
Tennessee and Florida playing tonight.
Auburn fired their softball coach as well this year, so starting over on that one as well.
Not a good year for the round
They
ball.
could probably just
Not a good year for anything.
Just
really.
hire one person. Yeah, I think we can officially say at this point, this has been the worst year in Auburn sports history.
Has there been
I feel very confident saying that.
Has there been a sport that they have done well in?
Women's basketball did okay. Didn't get into the NCAA tournament, but women's basketball went decently far in the NIT, so they did all right. Equestrian won the national championship.
Is that a sport?
It's a sport. It's horses.
Horses
Yeah.
participating in the sport.
Yeah, so,
Okay.
So
in a sport where other things did the sport for you, you won.
yes.
Okay.
Now we're just waiting for NASCAR to sign on as
All right.
a SEC sport as well, and then we'll be good to go.
That'd be
So,
awesome.
let's take another quick break. We'll be back on the other side talking about some non-college related stuff. David really wants to talk hockey.
So
can tell.
much. I want to talk about it
We're
so
probably
much.
going to do that. We may talk NBA as well.
Also been kind of slightly interesting.
Yeah, I'm still not really that interested in either of those things, but you might be, so we'll talk about them. And if nothing else, we'll provide some humorous comments. So stick around. We'll be right back on Outputting Our Coverage. And welcome back into Outputting Our Coverage. As we mentioned, David tells me that hockey playoffs are very exciting. I will let him plead his case now.
Not only have they been the most exciting NHL hockey playoffs that I can remember, because I've been paying attention so long, I think they've been the most interesting thing in sports in the last 6 months.
That's a big step there, David.
It's a big step.
Big step.
I will say it. If you need proof about the first round, you can find it at outputtingourcoverage.wordpress.com. I wrote a pretty in-depth article on that. If you want to go read it, it breaks down the first round. It breaks down a little bit of why I got interested in hockey in the first place. So you can find it there. But the second round followed suit right after that. Probably the most boring one was the Boston Bruins. Took the Rangers out really quickly. That wasn't too much of a argument there. The Rangers fired their coach yesterday because of it. Everything outside of that has been extremely exciting. The Penguins were pushed harder than people thought by the Ottawa Senators, so they thought that they might lose. The Penguins definitely a powerhouse right now. They've got 3 lines, all of who can score. Really going to be tough to beat. But then on the other side, you've got the LA Kings, you've got the San Jose Sharks, went to 7 games. Neither one of those teams won an away game. The home team won every single game. Most of those games were decided by 1 goal, including Game 7. Game 7 came down to 1 goal. San Jose had a chance to tie 2 or 3, but they just couldn't get it by the goalie, who's really hot right now for the Kings, who has a great name for hockey. His name's Jonathan Quick.
Oh, that's good.
That's an awesome goalie name.
Very good.
And then probably the most exciting series, you had the Detroit Red Wings and the Chicago Blackhawks. Now, the Red Wings should not even be in the playoffs. I mean, they really had to win down the stretch just to get in. I think we talked about them a little bit the last episode. But they jumped ahead 3-1 on the Chicago Blackhawks, who have been, on paper, the best team all year.
If I remember correctly, at the beginning of the year, the Blackhawks won like 400 games in a row,
right.
something like that.
When,
pretty good.
When the Heat's winning streak was being talked about, the Blackhawks were winning right alongside them and playing more often. So they can score goals, they can stop the puck. They're a really good team. But they're down 3-1 against this scrappy Detroit team who's been playing playoff hockey for the last 2 or 3 weeks of the regular season. So they kind of got gritty, won a couple games, one of them which was in overtime. So I don't know how you get more exciting than on the brink of elimination and going to overtime. And then finally in Game 7, came down to where they were tied at a goal apiece. Chicago scores midway through the third quarter or period, and it's called back because of a foul that Detroit had committed earlier, which stopped play. So they've got to go into overtime, Game 7. The next one to score a goal is going to the Western Conference Finals. And Chicago lucks out and gets a fast break, scores one, and there they go. So they won it at home, Game 7, overtime. I don't know what else you want for excitement. If you're not watching hockey, it's your fault.
Pretty good.
Yeah, all right.
I was impressed.
You can't describe hockey eloquently enough over radio in 2 or 3 minutes. You got to sit down and watch it. If you've got HD TV, there's no reason not to watch hockey. It's so exciting. You can actually see the puck now.
So when is the first game of the finals?
Saturday. Both game. Now it's the Western and Eastern Conference Finals. You've got the Blackhawks versus the Kings. You got the Penguins and the Bruins. Now Boston's playing like a team possessed. The city is really behind that team right now. So it's going to be a really interesting series. I believe that the Blackhawks series plays first, but they play at like 5 and then again at 7 at night on Saturday. You can find them on probably a lot of these games have been played on NBC's sports channel. So you look that up in your local listings. But hockey, people, it's what you need to watch.
All right, basketball. NBA, according to my Twitter timeline, lots of people care about the NBA.
I don't understand that either.
I don't know exactly how that happens. I believe our last show, I asked you what the chances were of a team other than the Heat winning the championship, and you said virtually zero.
Right.
Do you still think that?
I do. I think that the Heat are too good, although the Pacers are giving them a lot of trouble. I said, I think in the first round, that I thought the Pacers presented the biggest problem in this side of the bracket for them. I said the other team that provided a problem was Golden State, but they're out of it. So,
what about the Spurs? They're old, but they're very successful.
They're successful because they play so many different types of offense. Now, the reason that they blew through the Grizzlies were the Grizzlies are a very one-dimensional team. They want to bang down low, and they want to make it ugly. They want a slow game, and the Spurs were able to get it up-tempo, and they were also able to match up defensively down low. So they made pretty quick work of the Grizzlies. With the Heat, though, it's kind of different. I mean, the Heat want to spread you out. They want to play quick, use their athleticism. They want to penetrate in the middle and then kick it out to their three-point shooters. I think it presents a different problem for the Spurs. They'll probably make it close. If it were the Heat and the Spurs, I would say you're probably going to a Game 6. It'll be competitive, but I still think the Heat have a better matchup against the Spurs than they do against the Pacers.
Okay.
So right now, the Pacers have just as much a chance as the Miami Heat do to win that series. I mean, it's basically now a best-of-3 series with 2 games being played in Miami. However, the Pacers have really looked like the more dominant team right now. They have looked like they should win 3 of the 4 games. Miami kind of stole the first game. So, I don't know. The Pacers are creating some really bad matchup problems for the Heat.
All right. Who are the big names on the Pacers? I don't know anything about the Pacers.
You've got Roy Hibbert, who right now is looking like the man of the world. Roy Hibbert's a 7'2" center. Looked really good in the playoffs last year, but didn't really do anything in the regular season. Is very inconsistent. He's a Georgetown center, kind of plays more defense, blocks a lot of shots, but can take over a game offensively when he's kind of in the zone. So the Pacers spent tons of money to keep Roy Hibbert. Kind of criticized because not a lot of people thought he could maintain that success, but has been really good for the Pacers all year. and has had a couple games where he scored 20 points and gotten double-digit rebounds. So doing really well in the series. Paul George is probably the best offensive player for the Pacers. Lance Stevenson has been the big play guy who's kind of come out of nowhere. When Lance Stevenson has scored 20 points or more, I think the Pacers are like 3-0 or 4-0 in the playoffs. If he scores under 17, they're 0-3. So really kind of the big key as a third threat coming in for the Pacers.
Okay.
So they got George Hill at the point, and they've got David West, another big guy down low. They really love to bang you down low. They don't score a lot of points. They play really tough defense. They take away the 3-point shot. They take away the paint, and they make you shoot long 2-point shots. And if you're not sinking them, you're going to lose.
All right, then. Well, I'm sure everyone is rushing out to tune their channels for the NBA games right now as we speak, because I'm sure it's probably on.
I'm not going to write an article entitled I Love the NBA.
No, I'm not either. But what you are going to do is take us to a quick commercial break, and then we're going to come back and do weird news.
Oh, I love weird news.
That's going to happen.
All right.
On the other side, outputting our coverage.
With a dream, my cardigan. Welcome to the land of fame excess. Am I gonna fit in? Jumped in the cab, here I am for the first time. Look to my right and I see the Hollywood sign. This is all so crazy. Everybody seems so famous. My tummy's turning and I'm feeling kinda homesick. Too much pressure and I'm nervous. That's when the taxi man turned on the radio and a Jay-Z song was on. And the Jay-Z song was on. And the Jay-Z song was on. So I put my hands up to play my song. The butterflies fly away.
And we're back here on Outputting Our Coverage. As promised, weird news coming your way. David, first of all, do you know who the Grumpy Cat is?
I definitely know who the
Grumpy Cat is. All right.
Victoria is a huge cat lady, so...
All right, so Grumpy Cat, obviously the 2013 Webby Award winner for Meme of the Year, has landed herself, apparently she's a she, a movie deal.
No way.
Yeah. The Grumpy Cat's representatives, which I can only assume are mice, have teamed up with the studio responsible for Paul Blart Mall Cop and Jack and Jill for a movie that will feed off of the meme's lucrative merchandising and the feline's relentless social media presence.
I'm sorry, could you read those movies that they had done again?
Paul Blart Mall Cop,
Uh-huh.
Jack and Jill.
So two of the biggest flops in
Two
this,
of the greatest
in
pieces
the last
of cinema our lifetimes have ever seen.
Two of the biggest flops in the last 5 years. So
Yeah.
that's what you're getting.
Yep. The movie will be live action and will feature the Grumpy Cat we all know and love. No CGI or cartoon phony. The Grumpy Cat meme exploded in September 2012 after a post on Reddit sparked an internet phenomenon.
If you have not seen this, just simply Google Grumpy Cat.
Yeah, the animal has nearly 870,000 Facebook fans and more than 88,000 Twitter followers. What is wrong with our world?
If we have some time, I will explain to the listeners who don't know how YouTube actually works, how the advertising and the money get split up, and it will make you sick to your stomach.
Okay, so I just voted in a quick poll on this website that says, "Are you interested in a Grumpy Cat movie?" Apparently, 51.65% of the people
That's way too high.
that read this article are interested in a Grumpy Cat movie.
That's way too high. Now, answer honestly. How did you vote?
I voted yes. I'm interested.
You tipped the scales. You are that
I
1.6%.
must have been. There's probably like 3 people who voted in this poll. It doesn't
Right.
say how many there are. So,
All right, Andy. Have you ever been to a Burger King?
yeah, I try to avoid them now. It's
Right.
it kind of makes me feel sick when I eat there, but yes, I have.
So, have you ever met the employees at Burger King?
Yeah. I mean, I've interacted with them.
On
Sure.
the intelligence scale, from 1 being not intelligent at all to 10 being very intelligent, what would you rate them
I'm gonna go
as an average?
with, 3/4.
3/4. All right. You would have run into probably the smartest Burger King employee that ever existed. 2 men Jeremy Lovett, age 23, and Gabriel Gonzalez, age 19, held 2 employees at the Burger King in Stockton, California at gunpoint and demanded they hand over the restaurant's cash, which everybody knows Burger King holding on to a ton of cash. So they wanted all Burger King's cash. So during the robbery, however, another worker slipped out of the back of the store and found the empty car with its engine running and keys in the ignition that the robbers were going to use for a getaway car. The quick-thinking employee then got in the car and drove it down the block and hid it. So when the robbers ran outside, their getaway car wasn't there, and the police quickly caught them on foot trying to run away.
That's pretty smart.
That's a pretty smart move by the employee.
Yeah.
So I hope they give him a raise. Also, if you're the employee, though, and you see a getaway car, wouldn't you assume it's got somebody in it?
Yeah.
I don't know that I go hopping in that
Maybe
car.
they're not that smart.
Yeah, I don't know.
I would think at least if you're going to rob a Burger King, you should probably get some of the Burger King masks first.
Definitely.
To wear.
I think so.
I think you would definitely want to do that.
Or dress up like Wendy.
Oh, yeah.
That would be cool. Or Ronald McDonald.
Real Wendy? Or like the real Wendy that's on the commercials? Or like the new and improved Wendy that they found, like the young girl with the red hair?
No, old Wendy.
So the old...
Yeah, on the logo. Logo Wendy.
Oh, logo. I'm talking about like the actual real life Wendy. Remember
no,
when they put her
definitely
on the
not her.
commercials?
Yeah, that was
And
terrible.
people were like, no, look away. And
Right.
then they found a better looking one.
Yes. Yeah.
That didn't take long at all.
It did not.
Let's stick with a cat theme. David, a basketball-sized hairball was removed from a tiger last week.
Awesome.
Ty, a 17-year-old tiger kept in Florida, had the gigantic hunk of fuzz removed from his stomach after not eating for nearly 2 weeks.
It's probably normal for tigers, don't you think?
I don't know.
They're pretty big.
Yeah.
They live in a desert most of the time.
Apparently it's going to Ripley's Believe It or Not now. They did not have to pay for it. The officials gladly offered it up for free.
Right. What else are they going
So,
to do with it? Although eBay would have been a nice alternative.
Now, hairballs apparently are an important part of the Ripley's collection. The company already owns more than 600 hairballs,
That's too many.
including one belonging to a cow from Michigan that is believed to be the world's largest. The guy says we probably have 10 of them that are bigger, mostly from cows, but this one is from a tiger, and that makes it special. If a cow wakes
You
up...
can't make these quotes up.
Hang on. It gets better. If a cow wakes up during surgery, it only moos at you.
That is such a good quote.
Yeah, implying something ominous.
God, where do they find these
Yes.
people?
Yeah, great question. I don't know. Very, very interesting. We got time for one more? Real
No.
quick? No, we don't? Oh, okay. We'll
Unless
say
you can do one really quick.
Okay, German doctors say a man spent 15 years with a pencil in his head following a childhood accident. 24-year-old man from Afghanistan sought help in 2011 after suffering from headaches, constant colds, worsening vision. Turns out 10-centimeter, 4-inch for our American friends, pencil was lodged from his sinus to his pharynx and had injured his right eye socket. He said he did not know how the pencil got there, but recalled that he once fell badly as a child. I'm going to go ahead and assume after his parents gave him a free ticket to Oktoberfest.
Definitely.
So.
All right, well, that's all the time we have today. Do not kill me if this is the wrong song. This is the first time I've ever tried it.
No, you got it right.
Is it right?
This is the right song.
Yeah.
Our loyal listeners are
From
going to get their daily dose of
Romantic.
the Behoozvils.
Yeah, the everybody knows the band Romantic.
Yeah.
So
We'll be back next week, hopefully, assuming our private security firm does what they're supposed to.
we pay them a lot of money.
We may start our SEC previews, we may not, but you know it's going to be good regardless. So we will we'll catch you on the other side of outputting our coverage.